The cup was in my hand before I understood it was meant to kill him. I stood at the front of the Frost King's great hall in a gown the color of old ivory, my breath fogging in the cold, and watched the tall, pale-haired man across from me lift his own ritual cup. The hall was full of strangers wrapped in furs, their faces watchful, their breathing the only sound besides the crackle of a fire tall enough to warm a castle. The king's name was Erik. The songs called him the Ice Wolf, the monster of the north, the man who had broken my Alpha's army in a single winter. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a statue a sculptor had grown tired of making cruel, high cheekbones, ice-blue eyes, a mouth set in a line that had not smiled in a long time. He was devastatingly handsome in the way a blade is handsome, clean, cold, dangerous. He looked at me across the altar of frost candles. His eyes moved from my face to the cup in my hand, and something moved behind his own, not desire, not mercy, but recognition, the look of a man reading the last page of a letter he already knows by heart. Then he lifted his cup, turned, and poured its contents into the fire. The flames flared green. A hush went through the hall like a drawn bowstring. The acrid smell of something burnt and bitter rose with the smoke, and the taste of it touched the back of my throat, metal and rot and something older, something that made the hair lift on my arms. Erik set the empty cup down on the altar. His voice, when he spoke, was low and even and carried to every rafter. "The rite is not sealed tonight," he said. "You will not share my bed, Lady Alina. You will be shown to a chamber. You will not be harmed." He did not look at me again. He turned and walked out between the rows of standing wolves, and the cold came off him in waves, or perhaps it only came off the stones. No one moved to help me. No one moved to touch me. A broad, bearded man with a captain's knot at his shoulder, Rolf, I would learn later, gestured down the hall with a hand that did not quite reach for his sword, and I walked where he pointed, my chin up, my hands steady at my sides though the cup still trembled in them. The chamber they gave me was high in a tower, round and cold, with a hearth already lit and a bed heavy with furs. A window of thick, greenish glass looked out over a dark courtyard, and beyond it a black sea I could hear but not see. The door closed behind me. A lock turned. I stood very still in the middle of the room and listened to the footsteps recede down the corridor. Then I heard something else, a soft, scraping sound at the base of the door and a thin thread of acrid smell seeping under it, the same smell that had risen from the fire. Smoke, my heart knocked once hard against my ribs. I crossed to the hearth. It was only a hearth, the damper had been closed, and a foul smoke was pooling into the room instead of drawing up the chimney. I knelt, opened the flue, and watched the smoke turn and climb. An accident, or a warning, I could not tell which. I set the cup, his cup, the one he had not drunk from, the one I had carried from the altar like a fool, on the table beside the bed. The dregs at the bottom had gone black, blacker than wine should ever go, and glistened like frost on iron. I thought of Marcus. I thought of the way he had looked at me when our bond surfaced 6 months before, not with the wonder of a man finding his mate, but with the calculation of a man handed a tool he had not asked for. I thought of him binding the Vale girl a fortnight later, of him standing before the pack and saying my name as though it were a thing to be scraped off his boot. I thought of the war he had lost, and the peace terms, and the cold way he had told me I was going north. The tribute bride, he had said, smiling that golden smile. A generous gift from a grateful neighbor. A gift, a blade, a thing he did not mind spending. I looked at the black cup in the firelight and I thought, he expects me to be dead before spring. The Frost King had poured the wine into the fire because he knew it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the furs cold beneath my hands, and I made myself a promise in the quiet of that tower room. I am not your blade, Marcus. I would find out what had been done to me, and then I would decide which way the edge turned. They came for me at dawn, not the guards. A woman, old, thin as a birch twig, wrapped in a shawl the color of dried moss, one eye filmed over with age white. She carried a leather satchel and moved across the threshold as though she had been invited, though I had not invited anyone. Ingrid, she said, by way of introduction. I keep this hold breathing. Sit. I sat. She took the cup from the table without asking and carried it to the window, turning it in the gray morning light. She sniffed it. She dipped the tip of one finger into the black dregs and touched the finger to her tongue, and her seamed mouth tightened. Death curse, she said. Old craft, southern make, woven into the wine so that it would wake when the king's mouth touched the cup and the marriage rite sealed. My stomach turned over. A death curse? Your king knows his business, I will give him that. She set the cup down. Most men would have drunk it to be polite. This one has enemies in his own walls. Erik, I said. It was strange to use his name. He knew. He suspected. The cup was sealed in the south, sent ahead of you with your bride gifts. He had me look at the seal. I told him I could not be certain without opening it, and that to open it would break the rite's hospitality. So he chose a third way. She looked at me with her one good eye, sharp as a needle. He did not drink, which means the curse did not wake, but it is still here, girl, in you, in me. The rite was meant to bind you to him. When the cup was poured out instead of drunk, the binding did not close. It is still open, half-finished, and a half-finished curse is a live thing. She held out her hand. Give me your arm. I gave it. She pushed the ivory sleeve up past my wrist, and her breath went in. There, winding up the pale inside of my forearm from the heel of my palm, was a thread. Not a scar, not a vein, a line of something dark, moving faintly under the skin, like a hair-thin snake of black ink. It had not been there yesterday, I would have seen it. I had worn this gown since the border. The bond you came north with did not break, Ingrid said quietly. The bond to your alpha it should have. When he rejected you and bound another, the moon thread should have withered. But someone caught it before it fell. Someone twisted it into a leash. Marcus, I said, my lips were numb. Marcus's sorcerer, more like. A king does not weave curses with his own hands. He keeps one who does. She let my sleeve fall. The thread is tied to the death curse in the cup. The moment the Frost King seals a mate bond with you, the moment he takes you, in right or in truth, the curse travels down the thread. It kills him. It does not kill you. You are found standing over the body. Your alpha rides north in vengeance, and a puppet sits on this throne. The room was very quiet. Outside, gulls were crying over the sea. How do I break it? I said. That, Ingrid said, is the question. There are ways. None of them are safe. A knock at the door. Ingrid moved back, her face smoothing into its usual stern blankness, and a young woman came in carrying a tray of bread and hot broth. She was perhaps 19, plump and fair, with nervous hands and a northern braid coiled around her head. I'm Anna, she said. I'm to be your maid, my lady. The king said you're to have whatever you need. She would not meet my eyes. I watched her set the tray down, watched her hands, and noticed the small thing, a half-second pause as she glanced at the cup on the table, the cup with the black dregs, before she looked away. She knew. Or she suspected. Either way, she was afraid. Thank you, Anna, I said. The broth smells wonderful. She bobbed a curtsy and nearly fled. When the door closed, Ingrid said quietly, "Trust no one in this hold, girl, not the maid. Not the lord's, not the king's own sister. Does the king have a sister? A widow, heavy with her first child. She will probably try to befriend you before the sun is high." Ingrid tucked her satchel shut. "Be polite, be grateful. Be afraid of the right people. And do not, under any circumstances, let the thread be pulled." She left me alone with the bread, the broth, and the black thread moving faintly under my skin. I sat for a long time looking at it. Then I pushed my sleeve down, ate the broth because I would need my strength, and went to the window. The sea was the color of iron. Somewhere far below, a bell tolled. I was the blade. But a blade, I was beginning to understand, could choose which hand it cut. Erik sent for me after midday. Anna brought a heavier gown, deep blue wool trimmed with silver fox, warmer than anything I had owned in the south, and dressed my hair with hands that still trembled. I did not rush her. I asked her name again, and where she was from, and whether the sea was always this loud, and by the time she had laced the gown, she was answering in short, reluctant sentences. She was from a fishing village 2 days north. Her father had drowned. Her mother had sent her to the keep. She had been in service a year, a girl, not a spy, or a very good one. A guard escorted me down through the hold. Frostheim was built of black stone and ice. Its corridors hung with tapestries stiff with age, its windows narrow slits that let in blades of silver light. We passed an indoor garden, a courtyard roofed in glass made thick as a hand, where frozen trees stood in perfect, glittering rows and ice flowers bloomed on every branch. It was beautiful and dead, like the whole keep. Erik was waiting for me there. He stood among the frozen trees with his hands clasped behind his back, dressed in dark furs, no crown but a simple silver band across his brow. He did not turn when I came in, but he knew I was there. "Do you know what this place is?" he said. "A garden. A prison of a sort. My great-grandmother planted it. Nothing in it has grown or died in 200 years. He turned. Those ice-blue eyes moved over my face, measuring. "I thought it an appropriate place to speak with you, because I am meant to be frozen and silent like your trees, because nothing here can overhear us." He paused. "I owe you an explanation. You were brought here under false pretenses. I did not ask for a tribute bride. When your alpha offered one, I accepted because my council believed it would seal the peace. I did not know the rite would be turned into a weapon. You knew enough not to drink. I knew enough not to trust a gift from Marcus." His voice did not change. "I believe you are a victim of this, Alina, not an assassin. But I cannot release you, and I cannot treat you as a guest until I know who in my own court sent word south that you were coming. The cup was sealed before you crossed my border. Someone here helped prepare the trap. I thought of the black thread on my wrist. I thought of Ingrid's warning. 'The cup is one thing,' I said. 'There is more.' I told him about the thread, about Ingrid's examination, about the death curse tied to my old bond, waiting to travel through any new one. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, his face had gone still in a way I was learning to recognize, not anger, but a cold, controlled thinking, like ice closing over water. "Then no one seals any bond with you," he said. "Not me, not anyone. Until we know how to undo it. That is not a proposal I was expecting to refuse." That surprised him, a flicker, almost a smile, gone as quickly as it came. "You may walk the hold freely, the library, the hall, the battlements. The village below, if you are escorted. There is one place you may not go. The West Tower," his eyes sharpened, How do you know about the West Tower? I do not, I am guessing. Every keep has a locked door, and every king names it as though naming it will make me less curious. The almost smile again. The West Tower is locked for your safety, not my secrets. There is sickness there, old rot in the stone. Stay out of it. He was lying. I could see it in the slight shift of his weight, in the way his eyes moved past my shoulder to the glass roof above. I did not call him on it. I had lies of my own to keep. I understand, I said. Anna will attend you. Rolf will assign a guard. If you need anything, anything at all, you send word to me directly. He paused. I am not the monster your songs say I am, Alina, but I am not a fool either. Do not make me choose between being one or the other. I curtsied, the way I had been taught, and walked out of the frozen garden with my head high and my mind already turning. That night I waited until the hold was asleep. I wrapped myself in the blue cloak Anna had laid out, slipped past the guard at the end of my corridor. He was snoring, slumped against the wall, either incompetent or bribed, and made my way down through the dark keep by memory. The West Tower stood at the corner of the inner wall. Its door was banded with iron, and to my surprise, it was not locked. I pushed it open. A spiral stair climbed into darkness. I climbed it, my hand on cold stone, my breath loud in my own ears. At the top was a round chamber much like my own, but bare of furniture, a chart table, a cold hearth, and a window standing open to the winter night. On the table, maps. I crossed to them. They were maps of the northern border, my border, the one Marcus had crossed to start his war, and they were marked in ink I had seen in the south, a deep iron black no northern scribe used. Troop positions. Supply routes, a red circle around Frostheim itself. Beside the maps, a heap of ashes in the cold hearth, a letter half burned, its corner still readable. I knelt and lifted it, Marcus's hand. I would have known it anywhere, the long, slashing script, the flamboyant tale on the last letter of every line. When the king is dead, bring me her head. Make it look like the work of the cursed bride. The army will cross at the first thaw. I stared at it, a step behind me. I turned, the charred paper still in my hand, and found Rolf in the doorway with his sword drawn. The blade was dark and unadorned, and it was pointed at my heart. The king gave me orders, he said. His voice was tired, not angry. Kill anyone found in this tower, no exceptions. His grip tightened. Including you, my lady. I did not move. Then you should know, I said, that whoever has been using this tower left in a hurry. The hearth is still warm. It was not. But Rolf's eyes flicked to it anyway, and in that half-second I lifted the charred letter so he could see it. Read it, I said, before you decide whose orders you are following. He did not lower the sword, but he read. I watched the words land, Marcus's hand, the order for the king's death, the army at the thaw. Rolf's jaw tightened. When he looked up at me, the suspicion in his face was not gone, but it had been shouldered aside by something colder. Come with me, he said. He marched me through the keep at sword point, not to my chamber. To Erik's private rooms, a suite of low-ceilinged chambers lined with books, where the king was already awake and dressed, as though he had not slept. A fire burned in the hearth. Myra was there too, wrapped in a green gown, her pregnancy barely showing, her warm eyes moving from my face to the sword at my back. Rolf, Erik said, very quietly. Put that down, she was in the West Tower. I can see that. The orders were, I know what the orders were. Erik's voice did not rise, it did not need to. Put it down, Rolf, now. Rolf put it down. I held out the letter. Erik took it, he read it standing, his face lit by firelight, And when he finished, he looked at Myra and then at me, and I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Marcus started the war on purpose, he said. Yes, he lost it on purpose. Not lost. I chose my words carefully. Enough to bring him to the peace table, enough to make the tribute bride seem a gracious concession. The war was the setup, the bride was the blade. The blade was meant to be in my chest. The blade was meant to look like it was in your chest by my hand. Then Marcus rides north to avenge you. He is welcomed as a liberator. A puppet sits on your throne. I paused. It is a very good plan. I would almost admire it if I were not the knife. Myra made a small sound. The cup. Erik, the cup, I know. Someone in this keep sent word south that the bride was coming. Someone knew the rite, knew the cup would be drunk. Myra looked at me, and for the first time I saw past the warmth to the sharp, frightened mind beneath it. You are sure you did not know? I was in Marcus's bed once, I said. It did not occur to him to discuss his battle plans in it. Erik almost smiled again. It was strange, that almost smile, how I had begun to watch for it. Rolf, double the guard on the west tower. No one goes in or out, not even me. I want every raven that leaves this hold intercepted, every message read. We have 14 days, if the letter is right, 14 days until Marcus crosses the border. Find me the person who burned that letter. Rolf went. When the door closed, Erik looked at me for a long moment. You could have lied about the tower, he said. You could have hidden the letter. You could have let me walk into whatever Marcus has planned. I could have. Why didn't you? Because, I said, if you die, I hang for it. And I have very little interest in being hanged for a man like Marcus. Myra laughed, a short, surprised sound. Erik's mouth twitched. Fair enough, he said. You will not be hanged. You will stay and you will be guarded and you will tell me everything you know about Marcus's sorcerer. In the morning. In the morning, I agreed. I turned to go. Myra followed me to the door and pressed something into my hand, a small iron key, warm from her palm. The guard at your corridor was not bribed, she said softly, so Erik could not hear. I told him to sleep. If you mean to survive this, my lady, do not trust the people who are kind to you too quickly, myself included. Then she closed the door between us, and I stood in the cold corridor with the key in my hand and my heart beating hard. I had made it back to my chamber and locked the door when it happened. A sharp, burning pain lanced up my forearm, along the black thread from wrist to elbow. I gasped and caught myself on the bedpost. The room tilted, and in my ear, as clearly as if he stood behind me, I heard Marcus's voice. Low. Amused, "Hello, little bride," he said. "I can feel you." I did not sleep. I sat in the chair by the hearth with my sleeve pushed up and watched the black thread move faintly under my skin, like a worm under damp earth. Marcus's voice did not come again, but the burn did not leave either, a low, thrumming awareness that he was there, somewhere at the other end of the leash, listening. At dawn, Ingrid came. I held out my arm without speaking. She examined the thread for a long time, turning my wrist in the gray light, her one good eye narrowed. Then she went to the door, checked the corridor, and came back. "He reached for you in the night," she said. It was not a question. "He spoke to me. Words. Hello, little bride, I can feel you." Ingrid's mouth thinned. "Then it has begun. The thread is open both ways. He can pull on it. He can see through your eyes if he pulls hard enough. In time, if he learns to use it, he can move your hand." The cold that went through me had nothing to do with the morning. How do I stop him? Shielding, old craft, I can teach you. It will hurt. I am not afraid of hurt. You should be. She sat down across from me. The first rule of shielding is that you cannot fight the thread directly. It is tied to a bond. A bond is not a rope to be cut, it is a river to be dammed. You build walls inside yourself. Walls of memory, of will, of things he does not know about you. Every wall is a thing he would have to look through to find you. What things? Things that are yours, a place he has never seen, a feeling he has never caused. A name he does not know. She paused. The stronger the memory, the stronger the wall. Do you have such things? I thought about it. I thought of my mother, dead when I was 12, singing while she combed my hair. I thought of the old she-wolf in the woods behind my childhood home, the one I had fed scraps to for a summer. I thought of the day I had first understood that Marcus was not the man the pack believed him to be, a cold, clear moment of knowing, like ice forming on a pond. I have things, I said. Good, we will use them. She taught me for 3 hours. It was not magic as I had imagined it, no words, no gestures. It was a turning inward, a closing of doors, a slow and painful stacking of memories between myself and the thread. By the time she left, I was drenched in sweat and my head ached, but the burn in my wrist had dulled to a distant hum. That evening, there was a feast. Erik sent word that I was to attend, that to hide me away would look like fear, and fear was a luxury a besieged king could not afford. Anna dressed me in a silver gown that caught the firelight like frost, and Myra came to walk beside me into the hall, her hand light on my arm. "Smile," she murmured as the doors opened. "You are among enemies. Smile like you do not know it." I smiled. The hall was full of northern lords in furs, their faces hard and watchful. At the high table Erik sat alone, no queen, no consort, his crown a silver band. He rose when I came in, and the hall rose with him, and he led me to the seat at his right hand with a courtesy so precise it might have been carved in ice. A servant poured wine. I did not drink. Erik, I noticed, did not drink either. The feast went on. Traveling merchants brought news from the south, and one of them, a peddler with a fox fur cap, held the floor with tales of Marcus's court. Marcus's new bride was with child. The border lords were rallying to his standard. His army grew by the day. "Your alpha is a popular man," Erik said quietly, lifting his cup. "My alpha is a man who knows how to make himself popular," I said. "It is not the same thing as being loved." Across the table, an older man with silver hair and a gracious smile lined toward me. Lord Haver. He had been introduced to me in the receiving line. He was Erik's oldest counselor, the lord of a holding on the southern pass. "The lady is wise to see it," he said, in a soft voice like well-oiled leather. "Marcus is a storm. Wise men build roofs before the rain." He smiled. "If I may be of any service during your time among us, my lady, you have only to ask. The king is a busy man. I have ample time to see to a guest's comfort." There was nothing wrong with the words, nothing wrong with the smile. But the thread on my wrist, quiet all evening, gave a faint, warning thrum. "Thank you, my lord," I said. "I will remember that." Myra, beside me, had gone very still. The feast ended late. As the tables were being cleared, I watched Haver lean toward Anna as she passed with a tray of trenchers. His hand moved. A folded ribbon, pale, the kind tied to a raven's leg, passed from his fingers to hers. The girl's face went white. She curtsied and hurried on. I looked at Myra. Myra looked at me. Neither of us said a word, but I had my answer. I did not confront Anna that night. I went to my chamber, barred the door, and let Ingrid's shielding settle over me like snow over a fire. Layer by layer, memory by memory, until the thread's hum faded to something I could almost ignore. Almost. In the morning, I asked Anna to help me dress, and as she laced the blue gown, I said, without looking at her, "The ribbon in your apron pocket, you should burn it." Her hands went still against my back. "I do not know what you mean, my lady." "You do, and I am not angry with you, but if Lord Haver gave you something to carry, it was not a love letter. If it is found on you, you will hang for it. If you bring it to me, I will make sure no one knows you were ever part of it." A long silence. Then her forehead dropped against my shoulder, and she began to cry, silent, shaking sobs, the way the very young cry when they have been very brave for very long. "He said it was only a message," she whispered. "He said everyone in the keep sent them. He said he has my brother, my lady. He said he would put him out in the snow if I did not do as he asked." I turned and put my hands on her shoulders. "How old is your brother?" "7. "Then you have been very brave for a 7-year-old. Bring me the ribbon, all of them, every one he has ever given you. And then you will stay close to me, do you understand? No one will hurt your brother." "I swear it." She brought them. 6 ribbons, folded small, tucked into the lining of her straw mattress. Each bore a pattern of knots, a northern messenger's code, the kind of thing a fisherman's daughter would not be able to read. I could not read them either, but I knew who could. I found Rolf in the armory, sharpening his sword with long, even strokes. I set the ribbons on the bench beside him without a word. He looked at them. He looked at me. He set down the stone. "Where?" "Anna, Haver has her brother. She has been passing them without knowing what they said. She should be hanged. She is a child who was trying to keep her 7-year-old brother alive. Hang Haver instead." Rolf studied my face for a long moment. Then he gathered the ribbons in his big hand and stood. "Wait here," he said. He was gone an hour. When he came back, his face was like granite. "Troop movements," he said. "Your arrival, the layout of the West Tower, the location of the King's chambers, every one of them sent south. Every one of them in Haver's hand." He paused. "There is something else. The last ribbon is 3 days old. It says the death curse failed. It tells Marcus to move the plan up, to come before the thaw." The thread on my wrist gave a slow, cold throb. "How soon?" I said. "We do not know. The code does not say a day, but soon." "Then we have less time than the king thinks." Rolf looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time, not as a suspected assassin, but as something else. "An ally, perhaps, a weapon aimed the right way. The king should hear this from you," he said. "Then take me to him." Erik listened to all of it in silence. Anna was brought in, trembling, and told her story again. Rolf laid the ribbons on the map table. Ingrid was summoned to confirm the truth of the thread and the curse. Myra came, too, standing at her brother's shoulder with one hand resting lightly on the small of her back, as though protecting the child she carried. When it was done, Erik stood looking out the window at the Black Sea for a long time. "Haver has a son," he said at last. "I remember the boy. He came to court as a page, perhaps 10 years old now." "7," Anna whispered. "The brother she spoke of is not her brother. He is Haver's son. Haver took him south when the war began. He told Anna the boy was hers to protect because she had nursed him as a baby. He said the boy would die if she did not obey." The room was quiet. "So Marcus holds Haver's child," Erik said. "And Haver has been his hand in my court for how long?" "Years," Ingrid said from her corner. "Long before the war. The covenant craft in the cup was not woven in a season. This has been planned for a very long time." Erik turned to me. His face was calm, but there was a tightness around his mouth that had not been there before. "Can you shield against Marcus?" "Sometimes. Ingrid is teaching me." Can you break the thread entirely? Ingrid answered for me. Severing a mate thread is dangerous. It is tied to her life. If we cut it wrong, it takes her with it. Then there is another way. I said it before I had decided to say it. Every face in the room turned. Ingrid told me the forbidden way. The thread can be reversed. If Marcus pulls hard enough, if he tries to use me, to make me move against Erik, I can turn the current. Send it back down the thread to him. At what cost? Erik said. I do not know yet. Ingrid says no one has dared it in 300 years. Then you will not dare it now. His voice was flat. We will find another way, hold Haver under guard. Use the ribbons to feed Marcus false information. Buy time. Bring the southern lords north before the thaw. We will end this at the bargaining table, not through a curse that might kill you. You cannot bargain with a man who sent a death curse to your wedding. I can try. I looked at him. I looked at Myra, at Rolf, at Ingrid. I looked at Anna, white and trembling by the door. And I understood, with a cold clarity that felt like falling, that Erik would choose to protect me even if it lost him his kingdom. It was the kind of choice a good man made. It was also the kind of choice that got good men killed. My lord, I said, you are not listening to me. He raised an eyebrow. I am not your subject. I am not your guest. I am the blade Marcus sharpened and sent north to kill you. If you lock me away for my own safety, I am still his blade. If you send me south under truce, I am still his blade. The only way I stop being his blade is if I choose, openly, in front of both our packs, to be something else. The room was very still. You have a plan, Myra said. It was not a question. I have the beginning of one. Then tell us, Erik said. His voice had not softened, but he sat down at the map table and he gestured to the chair across from him and he waited. I told them. It was nearly dawn when the council broke. Rolf went to the barracks. Myra went to wake her own women. Ingrid went to prepare the oils and the old stones she would need for the working. Anna was put in a chamber off Myra's own, with a guard at the door, and the boy Haver had claimed was Anna's brother, to be sent for at first light. Erik walked me back to my tower himself. We did not speak on the stairs. At my door he stopped, and for a moment he simply looked at me, the lines of my face, the dark thread on my wrist, the silver gown I had not changed out of. Elena, he said. Erik, if this goes wrong, it will not. If it does, he continued, as though I had not spoken, I want you to know that I believed you from the moment you walked into my hall. Not because you were innocent, because you were angry. Innocent women weep. Angry women have something worth defending. I stared at him. My throat felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the thread. You have a very strange idea of courtship, I said, that almost smile. I have been told. He put out his hand, not to touch me, only to rest it against the stone of the doorframe, beside my head, leaning close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through the cold of his furs. The thread on my wrist gave a throb, but it was not Marcus's throb. It was mine. Rest, he said. Tomorrow we begin. He left. I leaned against the closed door and let out a breath I felt I had been holding since the wedding cup. Tomorrow came too soon. It was mid-morning when the scream split the hold, a woman's scream, high and sharp, from the direction of the West Tower. I was with Ingrid in the chamber off the library, practicing a shielding exercise, and we were both on our feet and running before the echo died. A crowd had gathered at the tower's base. A serving girl, not Anna, another older, was on her knees in the snow, being sick. Two guards stood rigid, their faces the color of old parchment. Rolf was already there, his jaw set. What happened? I said. Girl carried wood up to the tower, Rolf said. His voice was flat. She found the watchman, the one I posted at the door 2 nights ago. I made myself look. The body lay in the drift beside the tower wall, half covered by the night snow. The face was turned away, thank the moon, but the hand that protruded from the cloak was blue and stiff. No blood, no wound that I could see. The snow around him was undisturbed. Heart, Ingrid said quietly at my shoulder, or the curse. A man cannot be posted outside a room full of maps and ribbons and expect no consequences. She looked at me. Someone in this hold knew we had been in that tower. Someone sent a message south last night before Rolf changed the watch. Someone means for this to look like you're doing. The thread on my wrist burned, not Marcus's pull this time. His amusement, faint, distant, but unmistakable, the cold pleasure of a man who has just moved a piece across a board. He had killed the watchman, through the thread, through me somehow, by making a death in this keep look like the work of the cursed bride. Erik found me there, kneeling in the snow, my hands clenched so hard the nails bit into my palms. Whoever did this, he said, low, will be found. Whoever did this is 1,000 miles away, I said. I stood up. The cold was on my face, but my voice was steady. And he means for me to take the blame. We have less time than we thought, Erik. He is already here. Here, in the keep, in the walls, in my wrist. I held up my arm, where the black thread was moving faintly under the skin like something alive. He is not waiting for the thaw. He is coming now. I could not sleep that night. Not because of the thread. Ingrid had pressed a sleeping draft on me before she left, and it had dulled Marcus's pull to a distant hum, but because of Myra. I had watched her at the council. I had watched her face when Haver's name was spoken, when the ribbons were laid on the table, when the watchman's body was brought in from the snow. There was fear there, yes, and grief for a man she had known all her life. But there was something else, too, a watchfulness, a calculation. And she had left the feast early on the night the first ribbon was passed. I had spent my whole life around Marcus, around men and women who smiled and smiled while they sharpened their knives. I knew the shape of a plotter. Myra fitted almost too well, too kind, too quick to be my friend, too conveniently positioned as the mother of the heir. If Erik died without an heir of his body, the crown passed to Myra's child. A regency would follow. A soft, grieving sister on the throne, easily guided. I rose at midnight, wrapped myself in the blue cloak, and slipped out of my chamber. The guard outside my door this time was awake and alert, but I had anticipated that. I had Anna's iron key, the one Myra had pressed into my hand my second night, and a corridor behind the hearth that led, by Anna's frightened description, down to the old kitchens and out toward the chapel. I had spent 3 days learning the keep. I did not get lost. Myra's chambers were in the east wing. I reached them through a servant's passage and pressed my ear to the door. Voices, low, one was Myra's, the other was Ingrid's. I pushed the door open. Myra was on the bed, propped up on pillows, her green gown unlaced, her hands resting on the curve of her belly. Ingrid knelt beside her with a vial of something dark, and the smell in the room was not sorcery. It was peppermint and ginger, and the bitter tang of the mossy women drank when a pregnancy was uncertain. Myra looked up. She did not look frightened. She looked tired. "You were following me," she said. "I thought you were the spy." "I know you did," she smiled a little sadly. "I let you. It is better that you suspect me and find out I am loyal than that you trust me and be wrong. Sit down, Elena. Close the door. You look cold." I did not move. The watchman was not killed by me and not by Ingrid. We have been in this room since the evening bell. Ask the guard at my door. Ask my women. We have 4 witnesses. Ingrid held up the vial. The Lady Myra has been losing the child for 3 days. I have been trying to keep it in her. The floor seemed to shift under me. Losing it? Someone has been giving her moonbane, Ingrid said bluntly. In her wine. A little every night. Enough to weaken the child, not enough to kill it outright. If it dies, Erik has no heir of his sister's body. The succession fractures. Marcus walks into a kingdom already at war with itself. Myra put her hand over mine where I had come to stand beside the bed. Her fingers were cold. I told you in the corridor my first night, she said softly. Do not trust the people who are kind to you too quickly, myself included. But I also told you that if there was a spy, it was the person closest to my brother. She paused. Haver has been my brother's closest counselor since he was 16. Haver rocked me on his knee when I was small. Haver brought the wine to my chambers every evening with his own hands to toast the child. My stomach turned. Does Erik know? Not yet. Myra's grip on my hand tightened. He has enough to carry, but I wanted you to know what kind of man we are dealing with. A man who will kill a baby in the womb to take a throne. A man who will use a fisherman's daughter and a 7-year-old boy as pawns. A man who will put a death curse in a wedding cup and call it diplomacy. She looked at me, and her eyes were bright with tears she would not shed. If your plan fails, Alina, he will not stop at my brother. He will kill every person in this keep who ever loved him, starting with my son. I squeezed her hand. It will not fail, I said. I meant it. When I slipped back through the servants' passages an hour later, my mind was made of ice. Every piece had clicked into place: Haver, Marcus, the curse, the child, the army, the thread. There was only one way through it. I found Erik in the map room. He had not slept. I need you to trust me, I said. All the way, no protections, no guards in the room. When Marcus comes, I have to meet him on the walls alone. He set down his quill. He looked at me for a long time. Whatever you are planning, he said, I am not going to like it. No, I said, but you are going to let me do it anyway. Haver was arrested at the morning bell. He did not fight. Rolf and 4 guards found him in his chambers, dressed in his counselor's robes, sitting by the fire with a cup of wine as though he had been waiting for them. He set the cup down when they entered. He held out his wrists. Tell my son, was all he said. Tell him I did it for him. Rolf brought him to the great hall, where Erik sat in the old stone chair with Myra at his side and Ingrid standing behind her, and I stood at Erik's right hand with the black thread covered by my sleeve. The hall was full of lords, every northern noble who could reach Frostheim in a night's ride, summoned by Raven before dawn. Anna was brought in, small and white, and laid the 6 ribbons on the table. The watchman's body was carried in on a bier and covered with a cloak. The evidence of the moonbane was presented, in Ingrid's flat, tired voice. Haver listened to all of it without speaking. When it was done, Erik said, What do you have to say for yourself, my lord? Haver looked at him. The gracious smile was gone. What was left was an old man, very tired. That I loved my son, he said. That Marcus has him. That I did what any father would have done. Any father would not have killed an unborn child, Myra said, her voice like steel. Haver flinched. He had not known she was aware. The hall murmured. The boy, Erik said. Where is he? Southern holding, 3 days past the border. Marcus keeps a garrison there. Then we will send for him, Erik said. You have my word. But you, Haver, will live the rest of your life in a tower with no ravens and no fire. You will not be killed because I will not make a martyr of you. You will not be freed because you cannot be trusted, and you will watch from your window while I tear down everything you built." Haver bowed his head. It was, I thought later, a very Erik sort of justice. Not cruel, not merciful, final. As the guards led him away, the thread on my wrist flared white-hot. I gasped. My hand flew to my forearm. The whole hall turned. Marcus's voice filled my head, not a whisper this time, but a shout, ringing in my skull as though he stood behind me. 7 days, Alina. 7 days, and I will be at your walls, and when I arrive, you will open the gate yourself. You will put a knife in his heart yourself. I am pulling the thread, little bride. You cannot build walls high enough. I swayed. Erik caught me. His arm was steady around my waist, and his voice was in my ear, low and furious. "Can you hear me?" I nodded. I could not speak. "Can you shield?" I tried. I reached for the walls Ingrid had taught me to build, my mother's song, the she-wolf in the wood, the cold pond of the day I had understood Marcus. But Marcus was pulling now, really pulling, and the walls cracked like river ice. "Get her out of here," Erik said to Rolf. "Get Ingrid, now." I was half carried from the hall. The last thing I heard before the doors closed was Myra's voice, ringing out over the stunned lords. "The council will reconvene at sundown. No one leaves this keep." Ingrid gave me a draft that knocked me flat for 4 hours. When I woke, the thread was still there, but Marcus's pull had receded to a low, malevolent hum, the way a storm sounds when it has passed overhead and is not yet done with you. Erik was sitting in the chair by my hearth. He had not changed his clothes. There were dark circles under his eyes. "You should sleep," I said. "I have slept." "You have not." He did not argue the point. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and looked at me with those ice-blue eyes. "The council wants you sent south," he said. "Hand it over to Marcus before he reaches the border. They believe, not without reason, that it is the only way to avoid a siege. Will you? No, they will call you weak. They have called me worse." He paused. "I want you to tell me the truth, Alina, all of it, the plan you would not give me last night. Can it work?" I sat up. The furs fell away from my shoulders. The room was cold except for the small circle of warmth from the fire. "Ingrid says the thread can be reversed," I said. "A current of will sent back down the bond at the moment Marcus pulls hardest. If he tries to force my hand on the walls, if he makes me move against you, I can turn it. The curse he wove to kill you will travel back to him instead. And you, I do not know. I do." His voice was steady. "The last person to try it, according to Ingrid's own books, died of it. Her heart stopped in the same instant as the man she sent the curse to. I am not her. No, you are not." He stood and crossed to the window, his back to me. "I will not risk it. We will find another way. There is no other way. There is always another way." "Erik," I rose. My legs were unsteady, but I crossed the room and put my hand on his arm. He went still under my touch, the way a wild thing goes still when it has decided not to run. "Listen to me. You can send me south and Marcus will still come, because a man who sends a death curse to a wedding does not keep his word. You can chain me in a cell and he will still pull the thread, because the thread does not care where my body is. You can fight him on the walls and he will use my hand to open your gate, because that is what the curse was built to do." He did not turn around. "The only way through it," I said, "is to let him pull, to let him believe I am his blade, and then in front of both armies to choose you." That got him. He turned. His eyes moved over my face, and for the first time I saw the cost of the composure he wore like armor, the fear behind it, the grief, the memory of his mother. "If you die," he said quietly, I will burn Marcus's kingdom to ash. That is not the kind of thing a king should promise a woman he has known a fortnight. It is not a promise to you. It is a fact about myself. He paused. I would rather lose a kingdom, Alina, than lose the one person in it who sees me. The room was very quiet. Outside, somewhere below the window, a guard called the hour. The thread on my wrist hummed, but for once it was not Marcus I was aware of. It was the warmth of his arm under my hand. It was the blue of his eyes. It was the fact that he had said sees me, not wants me, not needs me, not owns me. Then trust me, I said, as I have trusted you. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he had made his decision. 7 days, he said. We have 7 days. Ingrid will teach you everything she knows. Rolf will train a guard to stand between you and Marcus's archers. I will hold the walls. And on the 7th day, when he comes, I will be beside you on the battlements. Erik, I will be beside you, he repeated, very quietly, very firmly. Not because I do not trust you. Because a man who loves someone does not watch her walk toward a blade alone. He had not said that word before. I had not said it. It hung between us in the cold air of the chamber, and neither of us reached for it. 7 days, I said. Ingrid taught me until my head ached and my wrist was raw. The work was not, in the end, about force. It was about choice. A mate bond could not be compelled. That was the secret the old books held, the secret Marcus and his sorcerer had tried to break. A forced bond was a chain. A chosen bond was a river. To reverse the curse, I had to do something no one had managed in 300 years. I had to stand in the middle of the thread and choose both ends at once. Choose Marcus. Choose the bond he had made. Choose the truth of it, that it had once, however briefly, been real, that my hand had once wanted his, that the moon had written our names together. And then, in the same breath, choose to refuse it, not to cut it, not to run from it, to look at the man at the other end and say, clearly, I am yours and I am not yours. I was made for you and I unmake myself. It was impossible. It was the only thing that could work. On the 5th night, Erik came to the frozen garden. I was there because I could not sleep, because the thread hummed louder in the dark, because the ice flowers in the glass courtyard were the only things in the keep that did not want something from me. He found me sitting on the stone rim of a frozen fountain, my cloak pulled tight, watching my breath fog in the moonlight. He sat down beside me without speaking. We sat there for a long time. My mother was a tribute bride, he said finally. Did you know that? No. She came from the Western Isles. My father won her in a war. He was not a cruel man, but he believed, as Marcus believes, that a bond sealed before witnesses is a bond that must be obeyed. He loved her in his way. She could not love him back. The bond was forced, and it ate her alive slowly for 15 years. His voice did not change. I found her in the snow in the end. She had walked out in her shift. She had frozen to death looking up at the moon. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. I swore then, he said, that I would never do to anyone what was done to her. When Marcus offered you, I should have refused. I should have sent you back. I knew the peace was too easy. I knew there was a blade in it. But my council needed the truce, and my people needed the grain, and I told myself a king does not get to choose the woman he loves. He looked at me. And then you walked into my hall, and you looked at me like you were measuring whether I was worth the trouble of killing, and I thought, oh, there you are. The ice flowers glittered around us. Somewhere in the keep a bell tolled. Erik, I said, I am not asking you to choose me to save yourself, he said. I am asking you to choose me because you want to. If you survive this, and if you do not want me, I will put you on a ship to wherever you wish to go. But I would like, very much, for you to want to stay." I turned to face him. The moonlight moved on his face, on the strong bones and the cold blue eyes and the mouth that had forgotten how to smile until a fortnight ago. I thought of Marcus, of the way he had looked at me when our bond surfaced, the calculation, the appraisal, the swift decision that I was not useful enough to keep. I thought of the black thread on my wrist. I thought of a blade deciding which hand it cut. "When this is over," I said, "if you still want me, I will stay. I will still want you. Then you should know," I said, "that I have already chosen." He kissed me. It was not the kiss of a song. It was careful, the way a man kisses something he is afraid of breaking, his hand light at my jaw, his mouth cold from the garden, his breath warm against my cheek. I leaned into it, and something in my chest that I had been holding tight since the wedding night let go. The thread on my wrist burned, not Marcus's burn, mine. When he drew back, his forehead rested against mine, and neither of us spoke for a long time. It was Rolf who broke the silence. He came through the garden door at a run, his face grim. "My lord," he said, "watch fires on the southern horizon. The army is a day early." The hold woke. Bells rang. Wolves poured into the courtyards in leather and fur, strapping on swords, hauling barrels of arrows to the walls. The villagers from below the keep streamed through the gates with their children and their chickens and their goats, and the great hall filled with the smell of wood smoke and fear. Rolf moved through it all like a man born for it, barking orders, placing archers, checking the gate. I stood on the battlements in a fur-lined cloak and watched the southern dark. Marcus's army was still hours away, but the watchfires had multiplied. A ring of them across the whole horizon. It was larger than I had expected, larger than Erik's spies had reported. He had called in every favor, every lord who owed him, every wolf intrigued by the promise of a northern throne. Erik came to stand beside me. He was in dark armor, the silver circlet on his brow, a fur cloak thrown over his shoulders. He looked like a king out of the old songs. "Haver sent for his son?" I said. "At first light, 3 riders. We may not get him back in time. Then we will get him back afterward." Erik looked at me. "You are certain." "I am. The curse, I know. Elena." He put his hand on my shoulder and turned me to face him. "If at any point it goes wrong, I will pull you off that wall myself. Do you understand? I will not watch you die for my kingdom. If you pull me off that wall, Marcus opens the gate through my hand anyway, and your kingdom falls with me." I put my hand over his. "You have to trust me." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded once and let his hand fall. We waited. Dawn came gray and slow. The army appeared with it, a dark tide moving across the snow, banners red as fresh wounds, Marcus's standard at the front. They halted 300 yards from the walls. A single rider detached himself from the line and cantered forward under a white flag. Marcus, he looked exactly as I remembered, dark hair, golden skin, the easy smile that had once made my heart beat faster. He rode a black warhorse, and his armor was polished until it shone, and when he looked up at the battlements, his eyes found me immediately. "Elena," he called, and his voice carried across the snow like a blade. "You have something of mine. Send her down, and I will be merciful. Refuse, and I will burn this keep to the ground." The thread on my wrist gave a savage pull. I felt it then, his will, sliding into my mind like a hand into a glove. My fingers on the stone parapet twitched. My vision blurred at the edges. I could feel him reaching for my hand, for the dagger at my belt, for the muscles of my arm. I built the walls, my mother's song, the she-wolf in the wood, the cold pond. I built them as fast as Ingrid had taught me, and Marcus battered against them, and I felt them begin to crack. "Elena," Erik said very quietly beside me. "I am here. I am here. It was not a wall. It was a door. I reached for it. Marcus pulled. I let him. I let his will slide into my arm, into my hand. I felt my fingers close around the hilt of the dagger at my belt. I felt him turn me, slowly, toward Erik, toward the king standing at my side, his face calm, his eyes on mine, not fighting, not running, trusting me. The lords on the battlements shouted. Rolf lunged. Myra screamed from behind us, but Erik did not move. He looked at me and he said my name. And in that moment, I did the impossible thing. I chose Marcus. I chose the bond. I chose the girl I had been when our eyes first met across the firelight, the girl who had believed the moon's word. I chose the truth of it, that for one breath, one heartbeat, the thread had been real. I did not fight him. I did not cut him. I opened the door wide and I said, silently down the length of the black thread, "I am yours." And then I said, "And I am not yours." I felt it leave me, not the curse, not the thread, but the whole dark weight of it, turning in the current like a log in a river, spinning and rushing back the way it had come. Marcus's face changed. Below us on the field, he convulsed in the saddle. His hands flew to his chest. His mouth opened in a sound I could not hear across the distance. His horse reared. He fell. The thread on my wrist blazed silver, a line of bright, burning light under my skin, running from my palm to my elbow, and then it went dark and it was gone. I felt it leave. I felt Marcus leave. The connection that had tied me to him for 6 months, that he had twisted into a weapon, simply ended. The field was in chaos. Marcus's lords were shouting. His horse had bolted. He lay in the snow, his sorcerer, a hooded figure who had been standing at the back of his retinue, kneeling over him, screaming words no one could hear. I saw, even from the wall, that Marcus was not dead. But something in him was broken. His eyes were open and unseeing. The dark magic had turned on his own mind. A rider broke from his own lines, a southern lord, his banner a white stag, and cantered forward with his hands up. Rolf, beside me, drew in a breath. The lord reached the gate. He called up that Marcus's new bride had fled to her father in the night, that half his bannermen had already deserted, that the army would lay down its arms if Erik spared their lives. The field waited. Erik stepped to the edge of the battlement. His voice rolled out over the snow, cold and clear as a bell. "Your lord made war on a bride," he said. "He wove a death curse into a wedding cup. He killed my watchman, and he tried to kill my sister's child in her womb. I am not a merciful man, but I am not a wasteful one. Lay down your arms. Go home. The lords who rode here under duress will keep their lands. The lords who came gladly will answer for it in the spring." It was over, not cleanly, not completely. The northern lords who had ridden with Marcus would be tried. The sorcerer had vanished in the chaos. The south would take years to settle. But the army in the snow was lowering its banners, and the gate of Frostheim was opening, and my legs gave way beneath me. Erik caught me. I do not remember much after that. I remember his arms around me. I remember Myra laughing and crying at the same time. I remember Ingrid pressing a vial to my lips. I remember the silver thread gone from my wrist, leaving only the pale skin it had marked clean at last. I remember looking up at Erik's face and saying, very quietly, "I told you I could do it." And I remember him laughing, a real laugh, the first I had heard from him, rough and shaken and alive. We did not marry in the spring. Erik asked me, properly, in the northern way. He knelt in the great hall before his whole court, in front of Myra and Rolf and Ingrid and Anna, and he asked if I would be his queen. And I stood there in a silver gown with my wrist bare and the northern light on my face, and I said the words I had been practicing in my head since the battlements. I am not your blade, I said. I am not your prize. I was sent here to kill you. I chose instead to stand beside you. I will choose it tomorrow and the day after and every day after that for as long as you will have me. I will have you, he said, for all of them. The hall cheered. It was not the polished cheer of a southern court. It was rough and loud, and Rolf was actually smiling, and Anna was crying into her apron, and Myra threw her arms around my neck and whispered in my ear that her son had kicked 3 times during the speech and clearly approved. The rite that evening was small. No great hall, no ritual cup. We spoke our own promises in the frozen garden, among the ice flowers, with only the court and the moon as witnesses. Erik poured the wine into the fire this time as well, but this time it was a joke, a private one, and we laughed as the flames turned briefly green, and he kissed me while the court cheered. We found Haver's son a fortnight later. The southern garrison, hearing Marcus had fallen, surrendered without a fight. The boy was thin and frightened but alive. We sent him to a holding in the north, far from his father's shadow, with a nurse and a pony and a promise that no one would ever use him as a leash again. Haver himself in his tower asked only that the boy be told his father loved him. Erik granted it. Marcus lived. That was the harder thing. The curse had not killed him. It had burned the part of his mind that wove lies, that planned cruelties, that reached for power. He sat by a window in a southern keep and did not speak. His new bride did not come back. The Vale girl returned to her father, and her father sent word north that she would enter a convent, and that was the end of it. It was Ingrid who told me, late in the summer, that the sorcerer had not been caught. Marcus did not weave that curse himself, she said, in the herb garden, where she was teaching me which plants stopped a fever and which called a fever on. Someone taught him, someone older. The craft came from the west, the islands beyond Erik's mother's home. They have been quiet for a long time. They may decide to be quiet again. They may not. I thought of the hooded figure I had seen kneeling in the snow. I thought of the way it had vanished when the army broke. Then we will be ready, I said. It was dusk. Across the courtyard, Erik was laughing at something Rolf had said, his head thrown back, the silver circlet on his brow catching the last of the light. He looked up and saw me watching him, and he raised his cup. I raised mine back. The thread on my wrist was gone. The cold was still there. It would always be there, in this hold by the Black Sea, in this kingdom of ice and stone, but it was a clean cold now, the cold of a place I had chosen. The frost flowers in the garden were still frozen. The sea still pounded the cliffs. The world was still large and dangerous and full of men like Marcus, but I was not a blade any longer. I was a queen. And the man across the courtyard was mine, not because the moon had written it, not because a rite had sealed it, but because I had walked into his hall with death in my hand, and he had looked at me and said, "There you are." I turned my face into the wind. Somewhere to the west, out past the islands, a storm was gathering. I could smell it on the air, iron and rain and something older, something waiting. I smiled. Let it come.